A wounded lioness lay dying. Then a tiny bird changed everything. A lioness lay motionless in the tall grass, her body still as the hot wind swept over the savanna. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden light across the plains, but she hardly seemed to notice. Her body was battered, her side swollen and dark with the mark of a wound, the cause of which was unclear but unmistakably severe. Beneath her tawny coat, the skin was stretched tight with infection, and she lay with a strange stillness, as if waiting, perhaps for something that would never come. For hours she had been lying here alone. Her pride was nowhere to be seen. There had been no signs of the others for days, no calls of familiar voices in the distance. It was just her now, a solitary figure in the heart of the wilderness, in a battle she couldn't fight alone. The air smelled of dry earth and the faint tang of her blood, and though she was surrounded by the wilds of Africa, she felt a quiet isolation, one that pressed in from every side. She had been hunting the day before, limping in a way that suggested her injury had been there longer than she cared to admit. The hunt had gone wrong. Perhaps it had been a desperate attack, or perhaps she had misjudged her prey. Either way, it didn't matter now. The kill was long forgotten, but the wound remained, festering and drawing her into a lethargic state. She couldn't stand anymore, let alone run. Her eyes were dull and her breathing shallow, but her chest still rose and fell. The heat from the sun felt like a weight on her, but she didn't move. Her only response, the soft twitch of her tail and the occasional shift in her gaze. She watched the distant horizon with something like resignation, but also something like acceptance. This was how it was now, perhaps the final chapter of her life. And there was no urgency in her eyes, no panic. She would not fight death. It would simply come when it came. The sounds of the savanna, chirping birds, the faint rustle of the grass in the wind, seemed to be a world apart from her stillness. She didn't stir when a distant predator passed by, or when the wind sent a small flock of birds overhead. There was no chase left in her, no instinct to flee. She had given everything to survive this long. Now, it was time to let go. The days of tracking had led humans to this spot, their eyes scanning the land for any sign of her. It had been a long search, and hope had begun to fade. But now, a figure in the distance, a faint outline against the vastness of the savanna, began to approach. And though she could not have known it yet, this figure would bring her something she hadn't dared to hope for, the chance to hold on just a little longer. The air was heavy with the scent of dust and heat, and for a moment everything felt impossibly still. The lioness hadn't moved since the figure appeared on the horizon. Her eyes flickered, tired, barely able to focus on the human approaching. She lay in the grass, almost invisible against the earth, her body a silhouette of silent surrender. The humans moved quietly, their footsteps soft against the dry ground, careful not to alarm her. There were no sudden gestures, no rushing movements. They had seen enough to know that patience was essential. Every action was deliberate, measured. With every step, they respected the fragility of her spirit, knowing that this moment could not be rushed or forced. When the distance between them closed, the human crouched low, just out of reach, observing the lioness. The tension in the air was palpable, the silence thick save for the faint whistle of the wind. The lioness, though barely able to hold her head up, seemed to be aware of their presence, her body slightly tensed, but there was no fear in her eyes, only the weight of exhaustion and pain. She blinked slowly, as though weighing her options, and then, with what could only be described as a faint sigh, she shifted her body ever so slightly, allowing her side to be seen more clearly. The wound on her flank was jagged, the flesh torn open, a deep gash that had long since begun to rot. It was clear it had not been treated in time. Her body had been fighting the infection for far longer than she could withstand. But there was no frantic panic in her, no attempt to hide or flee. The lioness simply observed the human, her gaze unwavering. She was at peace in a way that was almost serene, as if waiting for a kind hand to offer her the relief she had stopped seeking for herself. One of the humans, the one closest to her, reached out slowly, their hand steady, palm open. The gesture was soft, respectful. There was no rush, no need to force anything. They had worked with animals like this before, creatures in need of help who couldn't quite understand the help they were offered. The lioness shifted again, just enough to allow the human closer. Her breath shallow as they lightly touched the edge of her fur. The skin beneath was warm, damp with sweat and the strain of days in the heat. At first, she didn't react. But then, ever so subtly, her muscles relaxed, her body shifting into a gentler form, as though responding to the softness of the human's touch. She didn't pull away. She didn't resist. It was a quiet moment of understanding, mutual respect for the space they shared, a fleeting sense of connection that passed between them like the soft rustle of wind through the grasses. Just as the human gently traced the edge of the wound, a tiny sound broke the air, soft, high-pitched. A bird unseen until now fluttered nearby, its small body darting between the branches of a nearby tree. It landed just a few feet away, its wings barely making a sound as it settled into the tree's fragile branches. The lioness, though weak, turned her head ever so slightly toward the bird. Her ears pricked up, and for the first time in days she seemed to notice something outside of her pain. She watched the bird with quiet interest, its bright feathers flashing in the sunlight as it chirped a few high, delicate notes. It wasn't an extraordinary song, but in that moment it held something simple and pure, a gentle reminder of life beyond the struggle. The human, feeling the shift in the air, let their hand fall away from the lioness's side, allowing her the space to rest. The lioness did not retreat or flinch. Instead, she lowered her head, her eyes closing for a brief moment, as if savoring the fleeting peace that had descended on the scene. The bird's song echoed softly in the distance, almost as if it had always been part of the rhythm of the savannah. And though the lioness was still injured, still weak, there was something new, a quiet strength that had been kindled within her. A subtle shift had occurred, not in her body, but in her spirit. The weight of her isolation seemed lighter, her trust in the world around her just a little more present. For the first time in days, she wasn't alone. The lioness, though weak, stirred once more. Her legs trembled as she slowly pushed herself to her feet. Each movement was deliberate, as if testing whether her body could carry her. The air around her was still, thick with the soft hum of the savannah as the human team stood back, letting her find her own pace. For a long moment she stayed still, eyes fixed on the horizon, the vast land ahead of her. Then, with quiet resolve, she took a hesitant step forward. Her body ached with each movement, but she pressed on, finding her strength with every cautious step. The humans remained by her side, not in haste but with quiet reverence, allowing her space to walk as she chose. Her limp was evident, but she walked steadily, the wind catching her fur as she moved. She took several steps, then paused, glancing back at the humans. There was no grand gesture, no words spoken, only a shared understanding, a silent moment between them. With one final look over her shoulder, the lioness turned, disappearing into the tall grass. The humans watched her go, feeling the quiet weight of the moment. She had chosen to move on, to trust in her strength once again. As the sun dipped low, they turned away, hearts quietly full. They had offered care, but it was her choice to heal. The savannah would remain her home, and in the fading light, they carried with them the quiet miracle of her resilience.